I didn't know which telecast to watch. Do I take this samurai sword and jam it into my temple, or do I take this chainsaw and saw my leg off? I couldn't figure it out. And at that point, I started looking for a third ESPN channel, but there are only two.
Dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. How can ESPN continue to be this bad with their NBA coverage? How can a network that has been covering the NBA for over 20 years and has been criticized for their unbelievably bad coverage, how can they continue to be this bad covering the league that keeps them in business? Make no mistake about it. Without the NBA, ESPN ceases to exist. Without the NBA, the vast majority of the programming at the worldwide leader in woke, it is irrelevant. Hell, you could make the case that the vast majority of the programming at ESPN is already irrelevant, or at minimum, unwatchable. I just don't understand it. I don't understand how ESPN continues to provide the absolute worst coverage of the one league that keeps them in business. And it's not like ESPN is inexperienced when it comes to broadcasting major events. Even events that aren't necessarily major, ESPN has the ability to make them feel like a big deal. They do an excellent job with college football. The 2 times a year that Duke and North Carolina play during the regular season in college basketball, ESPN makes those games feel important. Both teams could be unranked, which is rare. But even if both teams are unranked, ESPN makes the broadcast and the game feel important. The College World Series, conference tournaments in college basketball, the college football playoffs. I don't watch baseball anymore, but when I was growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, Sunday night baseball felt important. But for some reason, when it comes to the NBA, ESPN's broadcast, it is the drizzling shits. And one of the main reasons it's the drizzling shits, it's because of who ESPN chooses to provide coverage. Now, I was fortunate enough last night to not be home. The 2 weeks that we were staying in Nashville, I did not have the abundance of resources that I have at home. I had to illegally stream the NBA Finals because I didn't have access to ABC up there. Last night, though, I considered myself fortunate to not have access to ESPN and ABC. I had to watch coverage of the NBA Draft on Twitter or ESPN's YouTube channel. Brian Windhorst was on their YouTube channel with 4 dudes from something called Numbers on the Board. I had no idea who in the hell they were, but they were damn sure better than the garbage that I eventually saw on ESPN and ABC. For starters, how do you have Brian Windhorst, one of your best talents when it comes to NBA coverage? Why in the hell do you have Brian Windhorst buried on YouTube? They had Ken Perkins on ESPN. Stevie A. Smith, he was on ABC. Malika Andrews, Andrea Carter. No offense to Andrea Carter, but you couldn't replace her with Brian Windhorst? You couldn't replace Malika Andrews with Brian Windhorst? But Uncle KC, Malika Andrews is the host of the show. She's great! Yeah, she's fantastic. According to Malika Andrews, Colin Cowherd is the newest addition to the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, if this were the WNBA draft, I would believe it. At 6'2", Colin Cowherd, he would be the tallest player in the dump. But at 61 years old and 61 years of inexperience playing basketball, I just don't think NBA teams are interested in drafting Colin Cowherd. Based on everything that I have watched and read, last night was an unmitigated disaster for ESPN. And I don't understand why Adam Silver continues to put his league through this constant embarrassment. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. As you can probably tell, Uncle KC, back home. We really enjoyed our 2 weeks in Nashville, but I'm happy to be home. I missed my studio. I missed my space. My wife, she works from home too, and we're used to having our own space during the day. My studio is completely detached from the house, so she's got the entire house to herself all day. When you go from that to an 800 square foot apartment, that is a major adjustment. Thankfully, though, the contractor finished renovating the house a day early, so we are back home now, and we're both damn happy about it. Over the last couple of months, ESPN has been heavily criticized for their NBA coverage. Now, obviously, this is nothing new to you guys because Uncle KC has been criticizing their NBA coverage for years now. But it's kind of been uncommon to hear guys like Bill Simmons, Colin Cowherd, publicly criticizing the worldwide leader in woke. But ESPN's coverage has been so bad, there's just no way to polish this turd. After 2 months of constant criticism, you would think ESPN would have their shit together for the NBA Draft. I mean, it's only one of the biggest events of the year for the NBA. According to my calendar, the 2024 NBA Draft, it took place on June 26th, meaning ESPN had 364 days to prepare for this. I guess that wasn't enough time. I guess they needed those extra 24 hours to prepare because what they presented last night, it reeked of a lack of preparation. Let's start with Stephen A. Smith, who took a break from texting sweet nothings to Shannon Sharp. Hey, it's me, Shay Shay! Stevie took a break from texting Shay Square to pretend to be animated about the Sixers potentially picking Ace Bailey, which, by the way, they didn't. Now, keep in mind, this was the very beginning of the broadcast, and Stevie was already screaming. I want you to pay very close attention to Bob Myers. Clearly, Uncle KC is not the only one who is tired of what ESPN calls coverage. Watch for yourself.
And what they can't do, which I teased on SportsCenter, this guy Bailey, that they refuse to work out for anybody. We don't know. We don't want to blame him. But in the end, you're grown, you're a young man, and your leadership, your representation is telling you not to work out for people. You can't be the team that had the process and you were throwing seasons for years. You can't be the team that had Ben Simmons that just spent the #1 pick on. And we all know his story. We'll be nice tonight because it's the NBA draft. It's about these kids. It's not about him.
Now, just to give you some context for those that don't know, Bob Myers is one of the greatest general managers of this generation. This dude's responsible for building a dynasty with the Warriors in the City of Rainbows. Bob Myers is a wealth of knowledge. He was the only one working the draft last night who had actual experience drafting NBA players. And what is ESPN doing before the #3 pick is selected? They're featuring Stephen A. Smith doing his best impersonation of Mel the Kiper. This is not the first time that Bob Myers has been visibly frustrated on an ESPN broadcast. The exact same thing happened on Christmas Day. Between Stevie and Ken Perkins, Bob Myers is rarely given the chance to speak. Just think about that. Last I checked, Stephen A. Smith has played 0 games in the NBA. Now, Ken Perkins, he won a championship with the Celtics in 2008, but he is responsible for drafting 0 NBA players. Bob Myers is a 2-time Executive of the Year. He's responsible for building 4 championship rosters in the City of Rainbows. If anyone is qualified to lead coverage of the NBA Draft on ESPN, you would think it would be Bob Myers, but instead, we get Stevie pretending to be emotional about something that never happened. Going into the draft, everyone knew Cooper Flagg, he was going to be the #1 pick. Now, full transparency here. I am not an expert on college basketball. Outside of March Madness, I might watch a handful of college basketball games every year. The vast majority of kids that were drafted last night, I was seeing them for the first time. But I'm almost positive Cooper Flagg is white. While researching this video, I double-checked just to make sure, and yes, Cooper Flagg is a white male. These days, you gotta specify gender, otherwise identifiers might get confused. According to Elle Duncan, the recently named host of the newest embarrassing failure at ESPN, Vibe Check, the all-female show that ESPN is burying on Disney Plus because they know no one is going to watch it. But according to Elle Duncan, Cooper Flagg is not white. Matter of fact, he shares a very strong resemblance to Ace Bailey and some other player who is yet to be identified. I'm going to follow that clip up with Malika Andrews announcing that the Blazers were drafting Colin Cowherd. Watch it for yourself.
You're looking at Cooper Flagg, and in just over an hour from now, that is not Cooper Flagg at all, actually. There's Cooper Flagg. I was going to say no, that's not him either.
So the Portland Trailblazers select Colin Cowherd here.
How in the hell do you get Cedric confused with Colin? I can somewhat understand the last name. I can understand the confusion there, but how do you get Cedric confused with Colin? That's like confusing Bob Griner with Brittany Griner. That's like calling someone Mary whose real name is Mike. Mike might be choosing to identify as Mary, but according to his birth certificate, she is still a he. Look, mistakes are going to happen. If this same thing happened while Fox was covering the NFL, no one cares. If this happened while CBS was covering March Madness or it happened on Inside the NBA, no one cares. People would laugh about it and move on. But because ESPN's coverage of the NBA is so dreadful, because their coverage is substandard, this just reinforces the narrative that ESPN's coverage of the NBA sucks. You can blame diversity hiring. You can blame ESPN putting people in positions that they're not qualified to be in. You can blame Stephen A. Smith being overworked. Whatever the reason is, it doesn't change the fact that ESPN's coverage of the NBA is the drizzling shits. And it's been this way for years. And nothing changes because Adam Silver allows it. Give me your thoughts on this. ESPN universally criticized again for their substandard coverage of the NBA. Give me your reason. Why does ESPN struggle to cover this league? Let me know. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.